Hi, I'm Kiran Trace. I'm so glad you guys are here today. My lovely, wonderful friend Sam Buchanan is joining us on the podcast, and we're doing a little journey to authenticity and listening to some of his wonderful insights on returning home to a hobbit. Here we go. Hi, I'm Kiran Trace. Welcome to Humans Decoded, a story of hobbits, fairies, elves, dwarfs, gnomes, and humans. If you get lost at any point, there is a deep dive on all the different avatars in episode 1. It includes notes. Thank you for joining us in a fun little chat about the vast potential of our human makeup. So you guys, Sam Buchanan is here. Sam is a film director. He's also a writer. He's based in the UK. He's won some awards for his shorts. He's done campaigns for Samsung, Marriott, Adidas. He's also a fabulous and wicked games master. He is often my goof-off pal. We get to all kinds of fun adventures when we shouldn't be. So he is often my partner in crime when mischief must be made. He is also a longtime Kiran Trace community member, and he is a delicious hobbit. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Kiran. What a lovely introduction. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Cammie.
Hi, I'm so happy to be in the studio with you guys today.
One of the things I failed to mention in the intro is that Mr. Sam Buchanan is the ex-husband of our Cammie Carlo here. And so it's wonderful to have this like chat because they have a, what is it called? A very conscious, beautiful uncoupling in which they remain best friends and family. And that's a high bar for transitioning out of old agreements, let's say.
True that. He's my ex-husband, aka bestie.
Absolutely. My mother still thinks it's very strange, but yes.
It's funny. The world is like that, right? The world is like, if you're best friends, you should, air quote, be married, even if that's not the authentic shape.
When you split, you're not in each other's lives anymore. That's the deal. So, they still find it quite odd that we speak regularly and that we have this new kind of relationship that really works for us. So perfectly millennial, if you ask me. I was recently reading about Saturday Night Live and the digital shorts from Andy Sandberg that defined millennial humor and existence, which was this random, funny for no reason, or like a movement of like, you don't have to understand this for this to work really well. Notice that this is working really well. Y'all don't have to understand it. Is the millennial theme, anthem.
I support that 100% and will be relying on that excuse hereforth.
I think it is so fun to talk about the journey to discovering our avatars. It is this sweet journey with so many unique nuances. Like every single one of us has a unique nuance. And people write in all the time and they're like, can you help me find what avatar I am? Or I'm not really sure which category I fit into. And we're always like, we can't necessarily help you because it's such an inside journey. It's not an external shape you put on. It's an internal architectural dig that takes its own time, because how the sedentary movements and the stalactites of your conditioning all grew in and around is so unique to you. So I relish the opportunity to get into this. Cammie and I are going to throw questions at you. Let's see what we come up with.
Bring it on.
All right. First up, Sam, you ready?
Absolutely.
Did you know what avatar you were? Was there a journey to discover it as soon as you learned about avatars? Was it clear?
Well, at first, I was actually misdiagnosed. I started life as an elf, and to be honest, I was perfectly happy with that. Great, elf. Yeah.
It's a really common journey, misdiagnosis always, because it's hard to externally see.
Absolutely. So I think the first warning sign came that maybe something wasn't right. I believe it was with you. I was with you, Kiran, and there were some animals.
The sheep.
There was sheep and goats, and there was some sort of kinship or bond being formed that just felt like, okay, something's not quite right here. But still, it wasn't immediately, oh, hobbit. It was like elf with hobbit rising. It was like, so it was like, okay, maybe there's a bit of a combo happening here. But the signs, I think, ultimately became impossible to ignore when I first decorated my flat. When I first got it was the first time that I had my own space to make my own. And I took full ownership of that. Now, and the choices that were made are like exhibit A, B, C, D, E through to Z. That actually there's no elf hobbit combo here. This is full hobbit. I have, heavy set wooden dining tables. It's all kind of rich colors in the walls and wallpaper. I have a woodland wallpaper mural in my master bedroom. And if that wasn't enough, I also have a deep set leather armchair that may as well be from the Shire. So I couldn't be in denial any longer. I mean, hobbits are short with hairy feet. I wasn't happy about that, but ultimately, my flat spoke for itself. So
Do you feel like there was these, I mean, you're kind of alluding to these like light bulb moments. And I very much remember that sheep moment. It was the first time we had met in person. We had known each other through private sessions and through the community, but it's the first time we met in person. And I distinctly remember being like, oh, I think Sam's a hobbit. And it was actually a few instances in that visit, but definitely when you met the goats, the sheep, and the dogs and the cats at my property, there was this irrefutable bond that was very hobbity, and also this willingness to like, because I had you hiking up mountains and very strange peaks and alpines, and there was kind of a very like gung-ho, resilient, we'll carry the ring to Mordor kind of vibe. There was a lot of like hints at it. But at any point in this journey, do you feel like there was like a real shocked moment for you?
I think a core tenet of the hobbit existence is the need for simple physical comfort. And it's something that I realized that I would so often ignore. So things like, oh, my feet are cold, I would just ignore it or just deal with it. And other things like, when I didn't own a coat until mid-20s. I'd wear a hoodie when it was cold, and I just didn't really prioritize that need for simple comfort. And it's just so unthinkable now to treat myself like that. So it's just such a simple act of self-care to look after yourself. And I can just feel like the body really respond to that, to those ways of showing up for yourself. And I think connection with animals is a big one. I get a lot from, I live near nice woodlands, which is a real blessing. And I can't have a fireplace in my house. I would have swapped my TV for a fireplace, and I watch a lot of TV, so that's saying something.
I remember I once went over to Sam's house and I was really upset. And he was like, okay, listen, get into my armchair. And I had my feet propped up. He gave me an electric blanket covering my toes, and just the sheer like warmth and comfort. I feel like only a hobbit would know how to offer that fully.
And it is so originates from Hobbit, because I would agree. There's people listening who'd be like, well, isn't self-care something? But like, as a sort of triple elf over here, I will tell you right now, my feet are cold. I haven't eaten or drank enough in the day at all. And I'm sitting in a very freezing little podcast space with just a light sweater. None of my physical supports are there, but there's no suffering happening. Like, it's just completely, it's like, I'm so elfy. Like, it's just completely fine. And if someone said, here, put the slippers on, I'm like, that effort is not worth the warmth. And also, I don't like the feeling of things on my feet. Like, I would rather be cold. I'd rather be a little undernourished and a little hungry so I can stay in my flow. But it's so truly hobbity.
And Sam, were there any atypical qualities than the usual expression? Anything you think comes to mind that is still kind of alive, but maybe not super hobbity?
So I think some of the things that really don't align with me, I am no gardener. So I have a share garden, and I have something, it's a terrible condition. It's called garden blindness. So I have no awareness of what's going on in that garden. I mean, all the trees and plants could be dead. They could all be thriving. I have no idea. It's just something that I just don't notice in my system at all. So the idea of weeding or putting my hands in soil, just kill me. I'm good. And I think that extends to, not being very good with DIY or crafty with my hands as well. I think that's something. And I think actually one of the reasons that maybe Elf did feel like an obvious pick was that my job is very ideas based. It's so I work in advertising, I direct adverts. So it's all about thinking up ideas and creativity. And it's energetic and intuition. So that's another way in which I think that it feels like, maybe I'm not straight up and down Hobbit all the way.
Do you think that on the journey, there was like a moment where you just sort of came home to yourself and there was a relaxation? You mentioned the chair, but other hallmarks of that?
I think a really good one is realizing how much I enjoy home cooking. And how much fulfillment I get out of putting the love and the care into preparing food for myself. And I think I can just, it's funny because I met with a friend of mine we got together and he was absolutely lamenting. It was a Sunday and he had to batch cook for himself for the week. And he was just going off about how much he absolutely hated it. And it just felt so baffling to me. I look forward to it. It's, when I go to sleep, it's like, when's it breakfast? So I really, obviously one of the courses, one of the Kiran courses is all about feeling into what the body wants to eat. And I think when you nail that, it's just, that's when life is worth living, when you really get that right. So it's a real highlight for me, food prep and just, that self-care through food. That's been really good.
It's so funny because you used to live with a fairy, i.e. me, and I don't think we ever really devoted much time to meal times. It was usually like me starving and being angry that the food wasn't ready in 5 minutes. So I love that you have the space now to like really pour the love that the food deserves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you identify maybe 2 or 3 moments when you saw some conditioning that was actually inauthentic?
I've got a really big one for you. Okay. So I don't know if you remember, there was this period, I think it was over lockdown, where everybody was going insane, where ice baths became this thing. That everybody suddenly decided this is the thing you have to do. It improves your health and it proves your dedication, right? And they've got one at my gym, and so I fully drank the Kool-Aid, and I was forcing myself to do regular ice baths. Okay. And it started off, maybe I could do 20 seconds, and then that went to 30 or 40 seconds, a minute maybe. And I remember thinking, oh, this is good. But what a nightmare. What an absolute, just as a form of torture. And I was just so convinced that this was a good thing that I was doing, whilst absolutely hating it. And it was only when someone who understood the hobbit nature found out that I was doing this, and was quite concerned when they said, you don't have to do that. And the relief in my system, thank God. And I've never done it since. And it's just amazing to me now to realize that what I was doing to myself, because can you imagine anything worse for cozy hobbits than subjecting themselves to ice baths?
It's so great that a community member was like, hey, this is not something that a hobbit should ever contemplate. This is definitely dwarf, gnome, elf, human land, but not a fairy or a hobbit zone. Which brings me to another question, which is that how do you talk to other people about avatars? Do you? Does it come up?
Yes, sure. So it's funny. I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily go too much into it with, normies. But I do like bringing it up with my brother, only because I like to annoy him because he's a dwarf. And he's so black and white about it that it just proves that he's a dwarf. And he says things like, well, either I'm a dwarf or I'm not. And it's like, well, case closed. So I wouldn't say generally I bring it up, but something I have noticed is that it's been really fun sharing some of the more hobbity aspects of myself with people that I care about. And I was dating someone recently, and part of what really drew me to them was that they had a shared appreciation of cozy details. So, what was in that home cooking that made that so special, or what made it really delicious? A steam room or a sauna, no, which one really gets you into that relaxation mode? She really appreciated R&R, and so I just remember that feeling really good, being able to enjoy that with her.
That's so sweet. I'm still thinking about when you dropped the word normies. Still trying to recover from that.
I think the decoders might love that language, because the community that's here listening, we're the decoders. And then there's this beautiful whole branch of humanity that is just not interested in decoding human behavior patterns at all. They couldn't think of anything less appealing. And we can refer to them as the normies.
What about people in our industry? Do you talk about avatars with people at work? Does it help? Are they receptive to it?
Yeah, I think it's good to know who you're communicating with. I have a friend, business partner who I'm close with. She's very, very elfy. And so she has a really good eye for design and detail. She's very stylish, and you only have to look at her home to see that minimal white walls thing going on. It's like a classic elf. So I think when we work together, I think we complement each other really effectively. And I often find that the clients who I'm pitching to are quite know-me or human, and often quite disconnected from the energy of ideas or creativity. So I like to make sure the way that I communicate an ethereal idea is done in a way that feels practical and understandable on their level.
I think it's a really great point that whether you can actually use the words avatar or human or gnome, there's always this kind of support by having this decoded human avatar system in front of you to find the pathways to communicate to the people in front of you, to understand what their feedback to you is. It helps decode their language back to you, what they're asking for as a client. It's like, how do you filter what that human is saying back to you through the creative expression of your craft? Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting. And I'm wondering if you've had any really big whoopsie moments. or even pivotal moments in your self-awareness process?
Well, I think that I cannot really understate how big the cold feet revelation was. Like just realizing, oh my, wait, things don't have to be this way. And I just would like to share like a purchase that I made, which has changed my life. Is it's like this little plug-in foot warmer, and you plug it into the wall, and it's like this little house for your feet. And there's this warm, cozy pad. And it just means that when you're watching TV or sitting at a desk, you can just plug this thing in, and in 5 minutes, your feet are toast. And it's just a huge game changer and an up level. So yeah, I'd say the error there is just how long I've been suffering living without that technological invention in my life. But then it's just the little things like noticing, being more available for when there's discomfort, and that small changes can just make it slightly better. So if I'm wearing a backpack wrong, right? So used to just doing a small shift that'll just make it more comfortable to wear, or just sitting in a position that isn't quite right. There's just this reorientation just to, pay attention and get it right, get the comfort right.
And Decoders, we will add this beautiful foot warmer to our marketplace. We often do these call outs to the different, like the product that's changing your life, that's really aligned to your avatar. Let us know. We'll pop it in the marketplace.
Maybe there's another product for your garden blindness. Who knows?
Maybe.
Possibly at some point, like, ironically, I would say that hobbits and blindness go hand in hand. It's actually very hobbity to be blinded. And I think about all the hobbits in my life and how often I'll say, can you get the mayonnaise? And they go to the fridge, they open the door, there's no mayonnaise, and they come back and there's no mayonnaise. And they'll go back and forth 6 times, and I'll go to the fridge, I'll open it, and sitting literally right in front, right there. And so this is really a comment. Just because you're pottering about doesn't mean you're seeing things. But because you're touching things, you're feeling through the space, like the pottering is going to get you there, not not this direct thing. So I do wonder if at some point in your life, and maybe it's when you're here, because we have all these gardens, that at some point in your life, that connection with a flower or with the smell of detritus, the plant detritus in the garden bed might create a kind of relationship for you. Who knows?
Who knows? Absolutely. I mean, I love nature. I love being out in nature. I like, when we've been at retreat before and there's redwoods, it's just like the whole thing is worth it immediately, because I can just spend time amongst redwoods. It's just hugely nourishing. But there's just something about, I don't know why I draw the line at gardens. Who knows? Not entirely sure.
It also, fairy domain could also just be fairy domain.
Maybe.
I used to be like, why haven't you noticed my peonies? I planted them. They weren't there a week ago, and they are now. How can you not see them?
Sam, do you have any insights to share with us about the kind of conditioning or belief systems, as the Decoders know it, that were playing in your system to propel you closer to that elf shape versus the more authentic pattern for you, like the nourishment?
Yeah, a few different ways. So I think a big part that it's played out that I'm still coming to terms with is through the clothes that I wear. I think I've dressed very elfy. So it's very much cut to fit clothing. I'm embarrassed to say, sometimes quite tight, like muscle shirts and things like that. So it's just felt like that's just always what I've worn. And I've been reminded a few times, like that doesn't vibe with your hobbit nature. And it's just, and part of me doesn't want to hear it, because I think there's still a small part of me that thinks I'm elfy and cool.
What do you think is the main belief system that trips into elf as opposed to hobbit?
I think maybe there's some kind of identity around things that feel like they align with what my ego believes elf is, right? Through my work, right, creativity and energy and stuff, I think there's a part of me that feels very identified with that wants that to be who I am. And so I think I resist the hobbity nature because I want to align with that and ultimately do myself a disservice by not really leaning into, the ways in which the avatar shape supports me.
Yeah, and do you feel like there's this barricade and we talk about this all the time in this podcast, like maybe there's a not good enough or a kind of fear of being unlovable that has clinged to this shape of elf and says like, that's how I'm cool, or that's how stylish should be.
Yeah, I think part of it says like comfort is laziness. That, to pay attention to your comfort and your needs in the moment, or, what specifically you want to eat is like, that's not exerting yourself. That's not putting effort into something. That's because productivity has been such a huge source of supposedly where my self-worth comes from.
And I think this great point you bring up too, male pride.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think fitness is a big part of that too. Just the way that, it's a way to suffer through fitness, right? And if you're doing that, means you're doing it right. It's this form of torture, and the harder you're going, the more effectively you're doing it. Which I think that also goes against some of the tenets of what being a hobbit is, where it feels like it's about self-care on noticing the details of that. And I can feel my system really respond positively to that. But there's something mental that wants to, push myself really hard in fitness because there's something quite masculine about that says that's how you're supposed to behave.
I would agree. I think it's such a beautiful piece you're articulating there. We're just like this subconscious male club, like to be a part of the male club has these values and these screenings. And ironically, it's not accurate because I think men celebrate power, and power comes from authenticity. Like the deeper the seat we take in ourselves, the more it resonates as powerful. The less authentic we are, the more squirmy we are in our own seat, the more sketchy and squirmy and weird. And that sort of depletes the power out of the being. People points to me all the time as like, she's so powerful. And it's not like I walk around and being like, I am she of great power. Listen to me, I am powerful. Like it's like the last thing I would ever focus on or care about, because of course for me it's about source. Like there's no me here, but as a result there's such a deep seat in myself, such an unedited, purely authentic being that it just ripples with power. And I think in that male, the book of how to be a man in our world does point all the time to that piece of like striving, efforting, that's power. Ironically, it's really not. Like actual power is that deep, comfortable, at home seat in oneself. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. That effort piece, that's been a big part of a belief system that's often felt like it's pulling me out of alignment, and it's often an idea of that's where safety is. If I've done enough, or if I effort hard enough, that's where security is. That's where good enough is, and that's what's been, I think, healthy about becoming more in tune with some of the aspects of, being more hobbity, is it feels like it's going in the opposite direction of that.
Has it
slowing.
Helped?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And has it helped unravel the story that effort is the way? Like, by just simply becoming more at home with the avatar?
100%, because I think it's like I can see, I can compare and contrast, right? I know what it feels like to exert and try to overperform and do too much. And I know what it feels like in my body when I slow down and move more, and, look after my simple needs. It just feels like it's just, the evidence is there for me. I know what each of those feels like, and I know which is more nourishing and which is more fulfilling. So it's been a really helpful way to not just default go to the, obviously there's sometimes very male-centric ideas of what success and, fulfillment looks like, because they don't resonate.
I should think that would carry too in your career and success in your career, because you know what it is as a filmmaker when you're watching film that's been overproduced, like overscripted, there's too much and it loses the humor and it loses the quick pace, or it loses that, versus just exactly the language you're saying, that like taking care of the simple need in the moment. I wonder if it's helping you overall become more successful in your career.
I've definitely had a perfectionist mindset, and there's definitely so many projects that have been flogged to death because they're never good enough. And the ability to let that piece go and not feel like not strive for that sort of very mental strain of perfectionism has been super valuable. And when you're a perfectionist, and you're making an advert, it just doesn't work, because it's a collaborative thing. You need to share it. You can't be this person who needs everything to be perfect, because it's an imperfect process. So yeah, absolutely. Embracing that too has been hugely helpful.
Great. That's beautiful. Sam, I love hearing how the simplicity of just discovering in your own way the more authentic nature of you has these ripples around relationship for you, around career and work for you. It sounds like, even much more playful around like family relationships, romantic relationships. Like there's just a lot more of emotional intelligence and maybe overall intelligence. So I feel like you've really drawn that map for us in this conversation, that the simplicity of taking a more authentic shape ripples out into all these areas of your life, creating a much bigger imprint of authenticity everywhere, and playfulness and success, I should think.
Well, absolutely. And not having cold feet anymore has solved a lot of problems. So yeah, can 100%.
Exactly. So decoders, listen, if you think you're a hobbit, we're going to link to the foot warmer. Apparently it's going to change everything in your life.
It's been so fun. Thank you for sharing that. And I've been sort of, I've witnessed a lot of the journey, but it's always really nice to hear someone articulate it for themselves. So thank you for sharing.
Sam, it's just a joy for you to be here. Thanks for being with us, hanging in with our questions. And we're going to link your film material below this. Anybody wants to check out some of Mr. Buchanan's very funny sketches and advertisements, have a look. Enjoy his work.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Thank you for listening. We obviously love hearing what you think. Your feedback helps us make a better show for you to listen to. So feel free to comment, and you can do it at Facebook, which is the Humans Decoded podcast. And if you're not on social, you can always email any questions to us at outreach@kirantrace.com. And thanks for listening. We love you.